Hello, hello. Thank you all for being here today. Today, we're fortunate enough to get a talk with Cherie Hart about her lovely novel, Love on Dove Street. And first and foremost, aside from just how gripping the story was in itself and how many different perspectives there were and how they all tied together so nicely, I love the cover. I thought the cover drew me in from the start. And I know they always say don't judge a book by its cover, but unfortunately we live in a society where we all kind of do. But the whole thing with the perspectives and how you made it so gripping and easy to follow, I think for me was what really made Love on Dove Street stand apart from other stories that I've read, because I am so easily overwhelmed and it's so easy for me to get lost that the way you did it was just hats off to you. You wrote a phenomenal story.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And the cover credit goes to Damien Chavanon, who's actually a political cartoonist in Paris.
Oh, that's really cool.
We're already hitting levels of trivia that we were not expecting. I imagine that's going to continue.
I hope so.
So I don't want to just repeat everything that Ryan said, but I'll tell you this very quickly, that Love on Dove Street falls firmly into the category of books that I wouldn't normally read that made me question what books I normally read. So I was like, this isn't the kind of thing that I would pick up usually, and I was absolutely hooked on it. I loved this. It was great. And so out with the usual genres that I would read. So to appeal to people that wouldn't usually go for something like how would you even describe it? Like, kind of like Mamma Mia with a dog set during the Ukraine war. Like, there's just all these people coming from all over the place, all these different storylines woven in and out of each other so expertly. Like, still the moments where the characters passed like ships in the night just missed each other. When you were always on the edge of a revelation, it almost felt like a Shakespearean comedy or something, with just like misinterpretations, confusion, storylines overlapping until the massive climax. So, bravo, bravo! I really loved it. What I wanted to start with was to have you tell us a little bit about yourself, given that you've got one of the most fascinating author backgrounds / profiles that I've ever seen. So, Cherie, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Okay, well, I'm Cherie Hart. I'm an American, but I've lived abroad for 25 years. And I started off as a tabloid journalist, digging through people's trash, literally in Hollywood, to find out the dirt, and then was unemployable for quite a while. And eventually found my way to the United Nations. It wasn't a direct path, obviously, but there was a very open-minded guy at the UN who hired me as a freelance writer, despite my shady past as a tabloid hack. And I just started as a day rate writer for the UN, and eventually it led to an overseas career at the UN, bouncing around the world, writing about the world's tragedies and triumphs.
That's wow.
On you go, Ryan. I was going to say that's also kind of one of the backgrounds of one of the main characters, right?
A few. There's kind of an amalgam in some of the characters in the book. But I wanted to thank you for your open-mindedness. One of your subscribers videotaped himself opening up the book, and his first reaction was, well, this isn't really what I'd normally read or what we normally get, but I really appreciate your being open-minded enough to give Love on Dove Street a chance.
Well, and that's
What we're for.
yeah, that's a big part of what we do, and that's the whole goal, because we're a lot of the bits of the curation that goes on behind the scenes is figuring out stories that you might not like romance, or you might not like this, you might not like that, but this is a story that kind of supersedes all of that. It doesn't matter your personal preferences, it's still highly accessible. Like, I think we find the hardest with sci-fi, because sci-fi seems to be a genre that is very polarizing, for lack of a better word. Sometimes you read a sci-fi book, like especially a hard sci-fi book, where you have to essentially have a degree to figure out what's going on. But finding the kind of light-hearted versions of all of those, and same with Love on Dove Street in that regard, is you can just attract such a wide audience, and it really helps open people's eyes to so many other stories that they could just be foregoing without realizing it.
Yeah, but most of us don't bother. We look at the cover and go, "Oh, it's sci-fi. I'm not going to try. It's fantasy. I'm going to try." With me, I just read one after another of spy books. I'm addicted to Karen and spy books. But I need to get off that track and open my mind to different kinds of books like you two do, and your
Well,
readers.
yeah, it certainly leads to finding some interesting things. It's been great to crack our own tastes open as well a little bit in this project. It certainly opened my mind to a lot of different genres that I wouldn't usually try. So I wanted to ask you a writery question to start us off talking about Dove Street. And it was, describe to me the process of getting into the headspace of a dog so effectively.
Well, I kind of channeled myself through her, but she actually is a real dog named Çiçek, which means flower in
Yeah.
Turkish. She lived on my street. I I got to know her over time, and I really liked her. And I kind of liked her goofy stance on our street. She would lope and watch everything, and sometimes walk by you, and sometimes recognize you. And I don't know, she was easy to channel. And I felt like I could put a lot of my opinions of people and viewpoints through her eyes because they were simple.
I thought it was a lovely way of bringing the, shall we say, the age rating of the book down a little bit, to have all of the really like intimate, steamy moments be seen through the eyes of a dog that doesn't care about it.
Yes, that's true. Everyone said, "Oh, you're going to have to write sex in a novel. You have to write," and I didn't know how to write sex scenes at all.
Yeah.
And I've read about other writers who feel compelled to write them, and they don't know how to. I mean, a really good sex scene is really hard to write, and I kind of skimmed over that. I wanted to, pull down the curtain in bedrooms and then start the next chapter, but I was told you got to put a few steamy things in there, and doing it through Çiçek's eyes, looking into windows and what she sees did help to help me to write those difficult scenes.
I mean, I think it's really cool as more of a reader, because you two are both authors. It's really interesting to see your different experiences and I guess methods with that, because I'm pretty sure, Steve, your method is to just write the sex scene and then delete it and then have that much of a gap.
Straight cut to black every time. Nah, I ain't writing that kind of. I could that's a funny one. I'm sure Cherie's thought about this as well. If you're an author, you have to kind of decide how far you're going to go with things, and it definitely changes the tone of the book, what you are and aren't willing to show. But I think in different genres, it matters more than some others. I guess there's stories like what Cherie's written. Like if you're going to read a spy thriller, right? There's probably got to be at least some kind of steam in there somewhere, right? Like it's almost just part of the genre.
Yeah, but I mean, those scenes make me squirm when I read them, but that's just me. And boy, they really make you squirm when you try and write them. I read an interview with John Grisham, the American writer who writes legal thrillers, and his wife told him, "You write the worst sex scenes of any writer I know, so just don't even bother." So he doesn't. So maybe if I have another book in me, maybe I won't try and force it.
Well, I think it didn't even feel forced, because through the eyes of Çiçek, it was a really, I think it just adds to just kind of the lovable narrator that you've created in the dog, because I mean, most people like dogs, and it's like that instant connection you have. Like everyone can kind of relate to seeing a dog. So it's you get to channel your own experience with dogs as you read it, and then say, like, oh yeah, this is relatable. We've seen this happen, or oh, I get to put myself in the eyes of a dog, and I've never done that before. It's really, it's like just the whole idea of having the dog as a narrator throughout the story was just really, really unique, and I think another thing that set the story apart in itself.
Yeah, well, she was my fallback when I'm like, where am I going to go with this? She was kind of the in-between link to the next bit of action. And she provided sort of comic relief for me where I could just step back and go, okay, where are these characters going to go? And they would flash in front of her, or she would think of something or see something, and that would also change my brain into the action in the book.
There was a moment when I started reading Dove Street, and I texted Ryan to say, I swear on my grave, if this dog dies, Ryan.
Well, I'm assuming your readers who happen to watch this video, it won't be a spoiler alert, but I did have.
If you've made it 10 minutes into the interview and you haven't read the book, go back and read the book because spoilers are going to happen.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, a friend of mine said he was ready to kill me when I killed Çiçek, and he just said, "What the hell? What the hell?" And then he sent me these, just expletives on text. He was so angry with me, and then I just told him, "Keep reading, just keep reading."
I think it's very true that some of the best feedback you can get as an author is just like single word expletives. Someone having a really strong reaction to something that you've written is great.
Yeah, but it's funny, I wrote myself into a corner when she died, and I go, "Oh, how do I get myself out of this? What do I do?" And I actually had lunch that day with a friend of mine who is from Moldova. And there's a little bit about Moldova and the Ukraine war there that I also got from her conversation. And I said, I got a problem here. What do I do? I've killed off like the most lovable character, and I'm not done with this book. And she had just read an article about this really weird, club sport in Russia about killing dogs, but also how this solution that they use to kill them, you can bring them back to life. And it's, vitamin B, who knew? But she told me this, she sent me the article. I'm like, oh, this is it. This is how I, resurrect this lovely creature.
Gosh.
I've never been so glad to read the words, I think it was barf, poop, or something. It just like describes what Chetjo's going through. And the minute I read that, I was like, oh, thank God.
Yes.
That was a roller coaster of a 30 seconds.
Yeah, well, barf and poop and fart, it's stuff that we all do. We all still, no matter how old you are, you still giggle. And no creature does it more unfiltered than a big dog. So
I was gonna say, moving away from Çiçek for a moment, I want to talk about the just all the characters you had in there, because as you've from your work experience, do you identify with oh goodness, it's been a minute since I've read this book,
it's
so I do
okay. One of the
apologize.
reporters, or
Yeah. Do you find yourself identifying with, I believe it was Sophie?
well, Sophie actually is based on an amalgam of girlfriends of mine who are foreign correspondents. There isn't any one reporter in the book, and I made a point of telling my friends, I promise you, I haven't revealed your life. And here in the acknowledgements at the end, I list reporters whose either Twitter feeds from Ukraine fed into the text of the book, or not really their personal lives. It really was a mix. But I've been writing for 30 odd years and all over the world, and I did meet a lot of lonely reporters, as I met a lot of lonely UN bureaucrats and diplomats who gave up a lot for their careers. There aren't many partners that want to hop around with someone who wants to live that kind of peripatetic life and dangerous life. So yeah, they did inspire me. And then more than inspire me, they helped me with the book, with the live action that takes place in the field in Ukraine in real time. I would follow their Twitter feed, and it would help inform that day's writing.
That's crazy. I guess moving a step forward from that, how was the transition from writing articles to writing a novel? Like, did you find yourself like outlining, or were you just kind of going for it, or?
Yeah, I didn't outline anything. And I find writing fiction much harder than nonfiction. And that's why there's actually a lot of nonfiction in this book. If I didn't have a war to follow, I'm not sure I could have just like invented. I don't feel like I'm that imaginative. I feel like I took real life scenarios and then either exaggerated them or twisted them. But at the root, like I have a lot of respect for people that write fantasy or sci-fi because they really invent from nothing. And I don't. I would read that day's papers or, the Guardian on, over the weekend, or like I said, the Twitter feeds. So it came from reality. And I don't know if I could just come up with something. Even Çiçek is a real creature,
Well,
my buddy down the street.
and even his resurrection is as well. And I think that
Exactly.
that all adds to the story. Like, oh shoot, what was the point I wanted to make? Was, oh yeah, like when he does get, like when he does get killed, and when he becomes kind of this martyr figure and everything, that's all very realistic. Like, you can see that happening with a very influential figure, regardless of if it's a human or a dog or anything. So it's,
Absolutely. Absolutely. But that also was inspired by an interview I read about Zelensky's wife. She was profiled in Vanity Fair in this real sort of sexy photos, and she got lambasted, like, what are your husband's president of Ukraine and there's a war going on. And she said, look, it was a way to keep attention. It's like, you can be mad at me for being in this magazine and posing like that, but it keeps the war alive. And people don't have enough of attention span. They just tune out and they move on to the next fiasco, the next war, the next earthquake, the next volcano. And it's a way to bring the war to the West and keep the attention and the spotlight, because it's already dimming.
yeah, especially with the new problems that have arisen in the past couple of months as well.
Yeah. People say, well, why don't you bring Çiçek? We've moved to Canada from Istanbul. Why don't you bring Çiçek to Canada? I'd love to, in my head. And then they said, why don't you write about Gaza? And I just, it's not something I would feel comfortable writing about, nor am I versed enough on the complexities of that crisis. And I'm not sure that people want to read a novel about that, but I don't know. I really want to have another Çiçek tale, and it hasn't come to me yet. But it will not be based in Gaza, that's for sure.
That would be a bold choice for sure.
No.
I thinking current events and stuff, like I really felt when I was reading the book like it was almost a recap of the year in which it was set.
Yes, it
I'd be
is.
really interested, like, to see how the book is received in like 5 years' time, 10 years' time, when it becomes almost more of a historical document. Like things that happened that year, you could read through it and get a good idea of what everyone was going through at the time.
Yes, it is like a time capsule, because, like I said, I wrote it from news clippings and magazine articles and Twitter feeds. It's actually being included in a compendium of 18th and 19th, 20th, and 21st century compilation of books written from the Ottoman Empire to present day about foreigners who lived in Turkey and wrote about it. And Love on Dove Street is the 2023 contribution to that historical book. For that very reason, they wanted what was going on when a foreigner lived in Turkey at this time. What were their views of Turkey and what was going on? So I was very happy that this book got selected for that little compendium.
No, congratulations. That is a really, really cool thing to have happen. And
Yeah.
I think as just an everyday reader, that's something I would never even consider to have been, I guess, a thing, you know? So it's really cool that all these little kind of what's the word? It's cool that they piece this together because, like you said, it's a really unique way to kind of gauge the history of something, especially as it changes over time.
Oh, well, I mean, I was very excited to be selected, but I was even more excited that you guys contacted me and chose my book for your book of the month club, your indie book of the month club. That I love what you do and what you're trying to do with writers that otherwise can't get their voices out there.
Oh, thank
Yeah,
you.
it's the thing that writers want most of all, isn't it? It's for people to read their books and then talk about them. I think it's the greatest gift that you can give a writer. Always
Yeah,
makes my day to make you know.
absolutely, because you certainly can't do it for the money.
Oh God, yeah, no, tell me about it.
But the best compliment is when you get an email from somebody halfway around the world saying, I loved your book. Or to me, I got an email from a Turk, which was amazing, who said, you really portrayed my country really well and what's going on. And that to me was remarkable, because I think it's kind of audacious for a foreigner to come and have all these opinions or viewpoints on when they're a guest, no matter how many years they've lived in a country. It's like, you need to be an observer. But I was really touched that he took the time to tell me that he felt that his country was well represented in this book.
It certainly kind of made me want to go to Istanbul, like the way everything's described. I've been to Turkey before, but I was an absolute tourist. I was in Marmaris on like the Turkish Riviera,
Oh,
where it's
nice,
just
nice.
pubs and restaurants. It's a great place to go for a holiday. But I would have loved to go to Istanbul when I was there, just for the history. See that combination of the modern age meets like ancient history on the same street usually.
Yeah, well, you could go and find Dove Street, which is Kumrulu Sokak. You could find the cafes mentioned there. You'll find
That's
everything.
cool.
Çiçek is still around. I went a couple months ago, and she had disappeared. But she's a little naughty. She bit somebody in real life. She bit a tourist. So they carted her away for a while in the whole neighborhood. She was the talk of the neighborhood, but she's back, from what I understand. But I couldn't find her, but people still send me photos of her, which I love. They go, she's been
You're going to be
spotted.
getting that for a long time, I think.
Anyway, she doesn't know how famous she is, but I wish you were more famous.
It's probably for the
Well,
best.
she'll only get more famous in time.
Yeah. Speaking of dogs, I immediately knew that David was a bad guy because the dog didn't like him.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
what a girlfriend of mine wrote me the same thing. She goes, I don't feel good about
Right?
David, but yeah. If dogs don't like somebody, that's dogs and babies, I think. They have this sense, you think they don't know what's going on, but they have a sixth sense. And Çiçek definitely knows a baddie.
I think the babies and dogs don't have the social programming that humans talk through. They just see things as they are, body language and such, how people act towards each other. The second
Yeah.
David was on the screen and yeah, the dog didn't like him, I was like, watch him, he's a bad one.
Yeah.
I would love to just go through all of the notes that I took while I was reading Dove Street, because I was trying to piece together what the kind of central mystery, and there's lots of mysteries in it, but trying to piece together all the plot twists that I could see coming. And the first one was obviously David's bad, dog doesn't like him.
Yep.
Trying to guess who Fatih really was and stuff,
Yep.
like it might be David and stolen his name at one point, and like I went back and forth through so many different ideas that I had for what the central mystery was. But it was amazing how you tied together at the end all these different stories. Like, did you spend an age storyboarding that, or was it more like a kind of mad scramble to cross things over?
It kind of evolved over time, but I had to keep it straight. I had little arrows and things, but I didn't plot it out. I kind of knew I wanted like a Inspector Clouseau kind of gathering where everybody's in one room, and then it's the big reveal. So it was hard to keep the storyline going and to also figure out how to get everyone together. That was the hardest. I kind of, after a while, knew who I wanted to do, what surprise and what twist, but I had a hard time keeping it going to get everyone down in that one resort all at once. That was the challenge for me.
Yeah, it must have been some effort. There was like 7 plot lines or something, I think, going all the way through it. It was relentless.
Yeah, some of them, you know, I thought maybe I got too many. While I was writing it, a girlfriend said, "Who's the main character?" And I'm like, ooh, maybe I have too many characters. There's a lot of them. And she said, "Well, how many characters do you have?" And I'm like, when I started counting, she shook her head and I thought, ooh, maybe I should get rid of some. And some I didn't like at all. How do I get rid of them? But, you know, once they're in there, it's hard to write them out. I don't know.
But it was also like with Fatih, you kind of only get glimpses of him until the end. So you'll have like everyone's got their little section, and then you have Fatih, and Fatih will have one section that's like a line and a half, and it's like, no, I need more of what is going on here. Like, it was, for me, that was a real page turner, just trying to figure out who he was and see the central connection, because you know, I believe it was Nina, sees him in a magazine cover from years back, and that's like, wait a second. And then all the gears start turning, and they don't just turn for her, they're turning for the reader too, whilst we're trying to figure out what is going on and how they're going to meet up and what the connection is.
Yeah, well, he's based on a real character of a restaurateur that I actually met in Eski Foça, is a real town. He did run a restaurant, and he has a very complicated personal life and real life. But I think he would probably be shocked if he ever read this book, but I don't think it'll ever get down there. I mean, it's a twist on his complex life, but yeah, he's got a very, very confusing life in that resort. I don't know if anyone would ever read it and give it to him, but anyway, it's parallel, but it's not the same. But it was inspired by a restaurateur in Eski Foça. If you go back to Turkey, you should go to Eski Foça. It's a remarkable town, resort town.
You really sell it. You really sell it in the book. If you want to go and visit it, I Googled it, and it was like, God, that beautiful place, man.
It's really beautiful, and it really did have a Club Med site. It was one of the first, if not the first, Club Med in the world was there. And I stumbled on it, and it's a ghost town now. It just shut down. It didn't work in Turkey. And it's like all these villas that are freeze framed, you know, it just shut down. And it does have a rusted bell at the front desk, and everything I wrote about is there. It's crazy.
So cool. It's cool to get a chance. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, on you go, Ryan.
I was just gonna say it's really unique when you get a chance to read a fiction novel that's based on so much truth, because then obviously you have your moments where you can be creative and jumble yourself out of a mess or this or that. But this more reads at times as a historical fiction, and like you said, like getting to go experience these towns and getting to go, like, Dove Street is a real place. Immigrants are really there. Like it is just really, yeah, I think it's great. Sorry, I'm gonna keep fangirling over this because I think it's great.
You guys. Anyway, it's really gratifying to know that it made it across the pond, and then again across another pond, because that's what you just hope as a writer, that it just gets out there. And it's so hard to get it out there because there's, you know, thousands of books that come out every single day. And just, like I said, I got so excited when you plucked mine out of the hundreds that you sift through. It really made my week and my month, and it's exciting to me.
Well, that's why we do it, right? That's why we do it. It's very gratifying to give other authors the thing that I know all authors want, because I am one. And speaking of which, so I can see Zoom telling us we've got about 5.5 minutes left. So I think we've got time for maybe one more. And I like to play a game, Cherie, with the authors that we have on called Was It Deliberate? Where I tell you one of the things that I thought about the book and check if it was deliberately done or not. Usually we find that it wasn't. So
Typos were not deliberate. Typos were not deliberate. They were errors.
Oh, no, not at all. God knows I've got enough typos in my book, man. But What I wanted to ask you was that I felt going the whole way through it that there was this running theme through the centre about abandonment and found family. Would that be fair to say? Was that deliberate?
Not deliberate. In
It's never
fact,
deliberate.
not
It's
deliberate.
never deliberate.
No. And what happened was that was retrofitted.
Right.
Hannah's backstory was retrofitted. My daughter, my youngest daughter, who was part of the reader group for this, she goes, "How could anyone be so dumb and just so deliberately naive when she meets this clear crumb bum?" She said she's got to have a backstory why she would fall for this guy. You have to create something that, because nobody's that stupid. So I had to, my daughters are big critics as I'm writing this book, but they keep me on the straight and narrow. I had to go back and put in there why Hannah was so desperate to fall in love with someone who was just not a nice guy.
Yeah.
So that was on that storyline. I don't know other abandonments. Yes, there were others, but that's more about what I learned when I was in Eskifocha. That was like a real story. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Çiçek gets abandoned, by their family as well.
Yes.
Like the subject left on the side of the road kind of thing.
Yes. I just had to. I put that in because I just didn't know how to have this big, beautiful Turkish Kangal living on our street, how she ended up there. I think every character needed a backstory, but it hadn't dawned on me that it's abandonment over and over and over. That wasn't deliberate.
Well, from this point on, yes, it was what you're talking about. Yeah, of course you meant that. Yeah, it's a story about abandonment. Yeah.
Yeah. Hadn't thought.
One quick question before this ends up being a word vomit at the end of the 30 seconds or whatnot.
Okay.
For people who like Love on Dove Street and who want to follow you, who want to know what you're up to, want to keep up with you, what's the best way they can either get a hold of you, ask you questions, see what they get a website, Twitter?
I have Instagram.
Amazing.
I have Instagram. And I mean, people could write me, that's for sure. I'm at heartcherie@hotmail.com. And I'm also on Facebook.
Amazing.
I don't have I don't tweet a lot, but I'm on Twitter as well.
Mm.
Usually what I tweet are retweets from my friends covering war. Or promoting this book, or new photos of Çiçek that people send me.
Oh yeah, if you want to see photos of Çiçek, you have to go to your Twitter account because I've definitely seen a few.
Yes. So
Put a
yeah.
link in the description, I think.
Yeah, I will add all of that in the description.
Yeah, but so my Instagram is Cherie Hart 007, wannabe
nice.
spy.
I like that.
And yeah. And then and I'm on Twitter as well. I'll be more active on Twitter. I just haven't, since we've moved to Canada, I haven't had a lot to say, so I tend to just repost anti-war tweets.
Honestly, most people on Twitter don't have a lot to say. It doesn't stop them.
Yeah, on X now, X rather. Yeah.
But we have less than a minute to go, and I just want to say thank you again so much for taking the time, for coordinating with us, for featuring, for participating, all of it. It's been lovely, and we're really excited for whatever that next story is, or if this is the final chapter. It was a great one regardless. But
Well,
continue. You got 40 seconds. I'm counting it. But
yeah, sorry. I'm like I said, I'm just grateful that you guys have this clientele and that the book's getting out to them in the UK. It just warms my heart.
And just in case you watched the entire interview and missed it, Love on Dove Street by Cherie Hart. Thank you again. Have a lovely rest of the day, guys.
Thank
Have a good
you.
one, Cherie.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.